This is an open letter to Miss Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Here's the thing, ma'am. You have some some interesting views regarding religions and specifically Islam. You have had some bad experiences with the Muslims, as have I. Being a minority, living as a minority in a majority Muslim country hasn't been exactly a pleasant time for me. But here's the thing, my objection to your perspective on Islam and in general other religions, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, all of them. Here's the thing now. What's the alternative? We are dealing with some primitive apes on Earth. There was in the news, in interesting news, that there's still some tribes in Papua New Guinea which still feast on their enemy's corpse from time to time when they have a skirmish with the neighboring tribes, the tree dwellers, tribesmen of Papua New Guinea. Whenever they have skirmishes with their neighboring tribes, from time to time they feast on their enemy's corpse, cannibalize the defeated enemy. Being a forest and protein and fat being precious commodities in the forest, they consider shouldn't go to waste. So you're dealing with a very primitive ape on this planet. These are all humans in Papua New Guinea that are still, behaving as such. So the question becomes, is this or a primitive form of to-do list, such as Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hinduism, primitive paradigm of living that basically says, okay, don't cannibalize your enemy. So Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism, they're all just one step above that. So the fucking Muslims that you see in the Middle East and Africa and here and there, these are who are right now, they're just homicidal and suicidal. What do you think is going to happen if you take away Islam? Just imagine that you take away their religion. Just tomorrow morning you wake up and somehow clear their mind of their religion, whatever is connected to their fucking religion. What are you going to be left with? What do you think you're going to be left with? Cannibalistic apes. You see, the clean slate on a human being, if you take the religion out, the clean slate is a cannibalistic ape. Cannibalistic primitive ape that you're dealing with. As is still the case in Papua New Guinea. In some parts of it, I guess. So the point is this, is sort of like, Libya, even with their religion, in that case Islam, even with their religion, they're still suicidal and homicidal. Mostly homicidal, and when they have no other options, they become suicidal. But the point is this: you're dealing with a very primitive, aggressive, paranoid, cannibalistic ape. And you need to at least change the paradigm of their understanding in the world to a more advanced one, and draw some lines for them and say, okay, recognize these people are your people, the same people who follow this religion are your people, refrain from cannibalizing them or killing them or eliminating them, because you're defining the religion is defining certain boundaries for this fucking primitive ape. And it's not just Islam. I mean, the only difference is for the Christian countries, the pink skin countries, is that these guys are doing their suicidal, homicidal tendencies, activities. They're doing their homicidal activities in other, in the brown skin land and in the black skin land, in South America and in the Middle East and in Africa and in East Asia. All these homicidal activity that the Christians have done outside of their own land for a couple of hundred years now. The last great Christian homicidal activity that took place was in Bosnia, in Yugoslavia. Before that it was World War II, and before that World War I. So up to recently, even the Christians had these homicidal activity. So you can see that even Christianity was just one step away above cannibalism, sort of like, okay, kill your enemy but just don't eat him. So it coming out and saying that, and we all know that even before that, all this colonialism that took place by the pink skins from Europe, Christian pink skins from Europe, went all over the world and murdered the locals and replaced the locals with themselves. All this activity took place under the banner of Christianity. Murder, homicide, murder, homicide, murder, homicide, all. So you can't actually blame, one religion. I mean, fuck, you even look at Hinduism. I mean, you would think Christianity and Islam are a little, the paradigm of Christianity and Islam are a little, half a step above Hinduism. In Hinduism, in their fucking caste system, the upper caste men have a right to lower caste women, married or unmarried. It's like they feel, they can rape as many lower caste women as they feel like it, the upper caste men. It's a primitive ape. What are you going to do with this primitive ape? I mean, when there are no social security numbers and there's no police and there's no FBI and there's no, enforcement of the secular laws, then you have religion. That was the whole point of religion. That if there is no technology available to enforce secular laws, you have religion to try to scare people of some punishment that they will receive after life, because the guy upstairs is watching them, so they're gonna punish them. He's gonna punish them even though other humans haven't been able to catch them in the act. But again, it is what it is. These religions, in specific Islam, that you seem to be so upset with, it is upsetting. But I see it from my own where I came from. I'm not even a Muslim, but I had a sister in the same. I grew up in the household with a sister who was 13 years older than me, and like me, she has grown up in a household that wasn't a Muslim household, but she was a thief, she was a liar, she was a cheat. She did whatever she could get away with. I mean, she couldn't walk in a room and not pocket anything that interests her, anything that would fit in her pocket. She'd just go around and steal things from around the home and take it to her room and lock the door, and like hunter-gatherers, primitive ape. She's still in the mindset of a gatherer. Instead of gathering things and taking it to her cave, now she had a room and she would gather and take it to her cave. So you are still dealing with a primitive ape, whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or whatever the fuck I am. You are still dealing with a primitive, very primitive ape that if they didn't have this shitty religions that they have, they would be, cannibalizing each other. So, and there are only two choices to come out of this paradigm of religion and move past it. The one choice is the way that the northern European countries, the Scandinavian countries, and the Russians have taken, and that is to inform people more, educate and inform people, enlighten people, and eventually they move beyond the primitive ape, and even without the religion, they have lost their tendencies to cannibalize each other, and even homicidal tendencies are subdued by informing, educating, seeing more, learning more. That's one way to get about this, get the control of this primitive ape, taking it out of being primitive by educating it. And the other way is the way United States has gone, and that is by enforcement of secular laws, really in a very harsh measure, which I don't think is going to work. We all see it. It's sort of like the only real solution is educating the primitive ape until it comes out of its tendencies, it loses its primitive tendencies. Enforcing it is a short-term, short-sighted measure. As we saw in Los Angeles, or in other places, the moment the police takes a day off, half the city goes up in flames because they have not spent money in educating the primitive ape. They have spent money in, they think, short-term, short-sighted. Let's enforce this strong secular law with a strong enforcement. So if the enforcement takes off a day, suddenly Los Angeles turns into Papua New Guinea. So my point is this, that you cannot blame the religion for where the shit is right now, how the groups of people in different areas of the world are behaving now, or you should only consider religion as it was a way to prohibit cannibalism amongst these primitive apes. That was it. That was its job, to prevent cannibalism, to prevent infanticide, to prevent, even with the fucking religion, even some, pre-Islam or pre-Christian traditions have seeped through into these religions as well. So you have female genital mutilation, which is not part of actually their religion, but still carried out in certain areas of the Middle East and North Africa, because it used to be a tradition before their shitty religion now, Islam. And you see some pre-Christian norms, pre-Christian ideas which has seeped through after Christianity has come around. The burning of the witches was there before Christianity, and after the Christianity was picked up, it became part of Christianity. Or even the hijab, the traditional garb that the men used to force women to wear. Well, some of it was forced, some of it was just because of the weather. I mean, for example, the motherland of Islam, Saudi Arabia, even men have to cover up because the sun is so bad that without covering you burn. People burn. The skin burns, it turns red and then brown, and you're dead. So even their men cover up. You look at their clothes. It's a white robe and a white headdress, and sort of like their own. You can only see their faces as well. It's sort of like with the women you only see their eyes. With the men, you only see their faces. Still, everything is covered to protect against the sun. So that tradition of that garb, that clothing tradition, has seeped through the religion that has come after. The paradigm, the perspective on life that has come after, which is the religion of Islam. And you see the same thing. Christianity had this hijab perspective because you know that because the Christian habits, the habits of the Christian woman is directly, it's a traditional clothing that all women in the Christian countries used to wear. And that also came from the Middle East, again because of the sun, and this covering had to take place. I mean, when you don't have access to these sun creams, these creams that they put on themselves to prevent against burning from the sun rays, when you don't have that in 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, when you don't have access to SPF 15, you put a cloth on your head and you hold it way out here, hoping to prevent getting burned from the sun, because you don't have SPF 15. So now they got stuck with it. It has become part of the religion, just like that the nuns are stuck with the habit because it's part of the traditional clothing of the Christians. And the Amish women still wear something over their head, and the Mennonite women are still wearing something over their head because it's part of the traditional clothing of the Christian women. Yeah, the idea of suppressing women is just Papua New Guinea, the tribal people of Papua New Guinea. I'm sure they're oppressing their women too, because it's just the weaker sex, and traditionally, the men, both figuratively and literally, men throw their weight around in order to, because they consider themselves as the pillars of the tribe, the strong men of the tribe. So, everybody should listen to them, including their wives. So when you look at religion, you should look at it, all these fucking religions, you should look at them as one step above cannibalism. They have done their job. But you know who hasn't done their job? Us. The only way we can move one step above religion is to inform, educate the rest of the people of the world, as good as the Scandinavians, are being educated and informed and enlightened. And that only happens not by, embargoing and sanctioning these shitty countries with these shitty religions. No, it has to be more contact. If they don't understand, you have to go and teach them. Not with soldiers, with tourists. The best thing the Western world can do, if they want, other countries, especially these shitty Muslim and Hindu countries and other backward Christian countries, to, the best thing they can do to raise their level of information, level of education, raise their level of intellect, is to have more contact with them. Just by tourism. Tourism is the best form of contact, because a tourist that goes in is not going in by force, is not going in with a gun, it's not enforcing anything, it's just spreading ideas. A tourist, two things the tourist does: spreads ideas and spreads money. And because a tourist spreads money, a tourist is welcome everywhere. Even in Afghanistan today in Afghanistan, the Taliban would love to have American tourists. Not to do anything bad to them, just because American tourism is money for the local merchants. And when the local merchants are happy, their overlords, the Taliban, are happy. And eventually the tourists will change the mindset of the merchants, and the merchants will change the mindset of the fucking Taliban. Yes, there are some hazards. Yes, some tourists are going to, perish in this scheme, killed, whatever. But you can consider them as martyrs of peace, these tourists. But still, they're going to be much less. When some tourists, something bad happens to them, it's still the numbers are much less than if a country is invaded by soldiers. I mean, 20 years of, American soldiers in Afghanistan. I believe in Afghanistan there were like 2,500 Americans died, and 250,000 Afghans died. None of them needed to die. If just as many soldiers that were sent to Afghanistan, instead of them, they were the same people, if they were sent with beach umbrellas as tourists, they could have affected more people mentally in a positive manner, with less stress and with less bloodshed. I mean, the same number of people, Americans, sent to Afghanistan as tourists, same number of people in the same number of years, if they were sent to Afghanistan as tourists, by just spending time there, spending money there and spending time there, they could have had a much better effect on raising the level of the local population, with much less casualties. If there were, in 20 years, if 2,500 American servicemen were unfortunately perished, if they had gone all as tourists, maybe 250 would have perished. 2,500, 250, maybe 25. I'm giving an upper limit. Maybe 25. Is 25 tourists perishing because they got, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or 2,500 soldiers perishing? Which one is better, 2,500 or 25? I go with 25. And this is what I don't understand, that the system, we heard, here's what I don't, this is what we know, that military industrial complex is, has a control over media, that you hear more about that one American tourist that got killed in North Korea, that one person that went into a coma and blah blah blah. You hear about that one American tourist that died in North Korea, then I believe the American casualties of the Korean War was something like 55,000. I might be wrong in that, but I think the American casualties of the Korean War was 55,000. You hear much, 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 much less about the 50,000 than that one person. It's amazing. It's sort of like if one tourist gets kidnapped or killed or whatever, you hear it from now till end of days. But even when soldiers keep dying, even their coffins, when the coffins come home, it comes home quietly. Bush, there is evidence. It was on the news that the Bush administration prohibited any pictures being taken of coffins going back home of soldiers. Why is it that we want to undercount, underrepresent the casualties of military action, but we want to overstress the casualties of peaceful behavior such as tourism? If there is one tourist dies or kidnapped, they talk about it for at least years in the media. And they keep reminding the population, remember that one tourist that got killed in North Korea? Remember that one tourist that got North Korea? Again, 3 months later, remember that one tourist? Everybody has to remember that one tourist name that got killed in North Korea. But how many times do you hear in media that, there are 55,000 soldiers died in North Korea, Americans, and a couple of million Koreans died. Couple of million Chinese died, but there are too many names. We don't want to name all of them. There's 55,000. It takes forever. But John, whatever, I remember his first name, John something, that he was one American tourist that, they did something bad to him. He went into coma. Everybody got to know his name. And because of that one tourist, we should not have any contact with the fucking North Koreans. Fuck! Why? Okay, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time and did the wrong thing. Get over it. More tourists. Have more tourists going to North Korea. More contact raises the level of the local population. Intellectually. When the level raises, they move above nationalism and religion and all of that shit and become more human, as the Scandinavians have done. There is, yes, Miss Ali, their religion shit, all of them, especially Islam, shit. But first, we have to recognize that religion replaced cannibalism. And then we have to recognize that the way forward is not to say, okay, let's get rid of the religion without replacing it with anything. Because if you get rid of the religion without replacing with enlightenment, they go back to the fucking primitive ape, goes back to cannibalism. If you replace with religion with nothing and take away the religion, the fucking cocksuckers go back to cannibalism. The only way forward is to inform more, educate more, enlighten more, raise the intellect of the local population so they can get past religion. And the only way to do that is more tourism, more contact, more trade. More tourism, more trade. You can start making the world a better place if you promote more tourism and more trade. And if there are some couple of tourists here, couple of tourists there, a handful of tourists here and a handful of tourists over there perish, believe me, you're paying much less of a price than if you stay away and eventually have to intervene militarily. That is, a lot of people are going to perish because you have stayed away and eventually you have to intervene militarily because the local population has not moved beyond religion and nationalism and all the shit that they are. To prevent military intervention, you have to promote tourism. Tourism and trade. Tourism and trade. Believe me, they will forget Islam in Somalia if they receive some tourists, some money from tourists. Slowly. I mean, Miss Ali, I understand you're from Somalia. The best thing you can do is start from very small. Start from very small in very secure, better secured places in Somalia. Start promoting and putting together tourist groups to go to Somalia. Spend money in the local shops. Talk to people in Somalia. The best thing you can do, if not Somalia, a border country which is safer. Find a border country to Somalia which is safer and start taking tourists there. Organize tourist, groups from Europe, from America, North America, from Western Europe, from North America, where people can afford. Put together tourist groups and take them over there. Yes, there are some hazards, but there is at the end of the day there is going to be much less hazardous than if the military has to get involved. You want to save your people? Start with the neighboring country to Somalia, and if Somalia is that unsafe, start with the neighboring country. Eventually the money that the tourists bring in and the mentality that the tourists bring in, and you do a lot of good for the North Americans and the Europeans as well, because these average people, average pink skins who go over there bring back with themselves a better understanding of the fucking planet and different areas of the planet. So they wouldn't be so gun-ho as to, yes, let's go bomb the shit out of them. If George W. Bush had traveled anywhere outside of North America in his life, he would have a much better grasp of the world around him than he did with his gun-ho attitude. The best thing you can do, Miss Ali, is start organizing tourist groups and taking them to Africa. Start from around your own country, around countries around your own, wherever there is relatively safer. Eventually other places will become safe because they see the benefits of the tourism. And start petitioning the governments of the North America and Europe. Start petitioning these governments to subsidize tourism abroad. Start petitioning the governments of North America and Western Europe to, instead of spending money on militarism, they should spend that money subsidizing tourism. their own citizens becoming tourists to African countries and Asian countries and Middle Eastern countries and South American countries, just to raise the level of understanding of their own people. That's a benefit. And to raise the intellect of the local shitholes that they visit. That's the best solution possible. Eventually Islam will go away. Eventually everywhere on earth will become Scandinavia. But if this tourism takes effect and becomes a common thing, it will become faster. That ideal world planet that we are looking for will be achieved much sooner than later. Tourism and trade. The more the better.